There is a letter sitting in the historical archive of the Italian Senate, handwritten, dated June 1884, that most musicologists walk past without reading in full. It was written by Giuseppe Verdi, the composer of Othello, of Aida, of La Traviata, one of the most precise musical minds of the 19th century. In that letter, Verdi is not writing about melody. He is not writing about harmony or structure or drama. He is writing about a single number. He is writing about the frequency of the note A. And he is begging, that is the word, begging the Italian Music Commission not to raise it. He writes that the pitch standard then being considered would force his singers to strain, that it would compress the natural resonance of the human voice, that it was being pushed not for musical reasons, but for commercial ones, louder orchestras, more impressive concert halls, instruments that projected further into the back rows of theaters that were getting larger and needed to be filled. Verdi lost that argument. Most people do not know he made it. I found this letter because I was looking for something else entirely, trying to trace when exactly the modern orchestra became standardized and why. What I found instead was a 55-year paper trail that ends in London in May 1939, 6 weeks before the world went to war, and a tuning fork. Here is what the standard history of musical pitch tells you. For most of recorded musical history, there was no universal standard for the note A. Different orchestras, different countries, different instrument makers all used slightly different reference points. A violin in Vienna might be tuned to a slightly different A than a violin in Paris. Opera singers traveled between cities and had to constantly adjust. Instrument makers could not collaborate across borders. There was genuine practical chaos. In 1939, an international conference in London resolved this by agreeing on a universal standard. A equals 440 cycles per second, 440 hertz in modern terminology. This was later formalized by the International Organization for Standardization as ISO 16, first issued in 1955 and confirmed in 1975. The story is framed as progress. Rational actors identified a practical problem, assembled experts, and implemented a solution. The world's music was unified. Orchestras could communicate. The modern era of recorded sound could proceed on stable ground. That is true, but it is incomplete in ways that matter. To understand what was changed in 1939, you first have to understand what existed before it. The word Hertz, Hz, means cycles per second. It is named after Heinrich Hertz, the German physicist who first demonstrated radio waves in 1888. When we say A equals 440 Hertz, we mean the string or column of air is vibrating 440 times every second. That vibration is what your ear interprets as a pitch. Before standardization, pitch varied enormously across history. In the Baroque period, roughly 1600 to 1750, the standard reference for A hovered around 415 Hertz. When Johann Sebastian Bach wrote his cantatas, his singers and instrumentalists were performing at what we would today call a noticeably lower pitch than a modern orchestra. By the 1800s, as concert halls grew and orchestras expanded, pitch had creeped upward. Not through any coordinated decision, through competitive pressure. A slightly higher pitch sounds brighter, more penetrating.
Audiences in large halls responded to it. Orchestras adopted it. Instrument makers built to match. The pitch rose the way prices rise in an economy, not through planning, but through incentive. By the mid-19th century, pitch standards ranged from A equals 435 in France, the diapason normal, established by French government decree in 1859, to A equals 452 in some English concert halls. A difference of 17 cycles per second may sound trivial. In a performance hall with a full orchestra, with a soprano singing near the top of her range, those 17 cycles were the difference between her voice opening and her voice breaking. That is what Verdi understood. That is what the letter was about. And that tuning fork in his hand, we will come back to that. Now, here is where the history becomes uncomfortable, because the conference that changed this in 1939 did not simply pick a number, it chose between two numbers.
By the late 1800s, a rough consensus had formed among composers, physicists, and instrument makers around two competing pitch standards. The first was A equals 435 Hz, the French standard, adopted widely across Europe, endorsed by composers including Giacomo Meyerbeer and Hector Berlioz. The second was A equals 432 Hz, not a government standard, but a frequency that had been quietly advocated by a growing number of researchers, physicians, and composers who were looking at the mathematics of sound itself. 432 is not an arbitrary number. It is 16 times 27. It is 12 times 36. It divides cleanly against 360, the number of degrees in a circle, the number the ancient Babylonians chose for their calendar. It sits in integer relationship with 8 Hz, which you will want to remember. It produces what acoustic physicists call coincident harmonics, meaning when you build a musical scale upward from A equals 432, the other notes of the scale also fall on whole or near-whole numbers of vibrations per second. At A equals 440, they do not. The math breaks into decimals. Hermann von Helmholtz, the German physician and physicist, the man whose 1863 work On the Sensations of Tone became the founding document of modern acoustics, had conducted decades of research into natural resonance. Helmholtz's work, which is still cited in physics textbooks today, established that sound is not just a mechanical phenomenon. It interacts with physical matter, with the body, with the nervous system. His successors in the field of acoustic medicine began suggesting that the frequency of 432 Hz had physiological properties that 440 did not, that it was easier for the human vocal tract to produce, that it created less tension in string instruments, that audiences in controlled settings described music performed at 432 as warmer and more resolved, while music performed at 440 was described as brighter but also more agitating. This is not mysticism, this is acoustic physics. The claims were documented, they were in the literature. And then, in May 1939, a conference convened in London. The conference was organized by the British Standards Institution. Its mandate was narrow and technical: agree on a universal pitch standard for international use. 19 countries sent representatives. The two serious candidates were A equals 432 Hz and A equals 440 Hz. They chose 440. The conference report does not explain why 440 was selected over 432. It records the vote. It does not record the debate. Here is what it does record: that Germany sent representatives,
That the push within the conference for 440 over 432 was described in subsequent accounts as coming primarily from the German delegation. This is not a conspiracy in the dramatic sense. There were no secret meetings. There was no single architect. It was something more durable than a conspiracy. It was convergent interest, a group of institutional actors whose commercial, political, and industrial incentives all pointed in the same direction, arriving at the same outcome without needing to coordinate explicitly. By 1939, the German radio broadcasting industry, the Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, the State Broadcasting Corporation, had already standardized its transmission equipment to A equals 440. Their signal generators, their studio instruments, their recording technology, all of it built around 440. To adopt 432 internationally would have required the Germans to rebuild or retool a significant portion of their broadcast infrastructure. That is a financial interest. It is also worth noting, and this is simply a matter of historical record, that the Reichsminister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, had taken a specific and documented interest in the psychological uses of music and sound in the years leading up to 1939. The degree to which that interest shaped German technical standardization preferences cannot be established from the surviving conference records. The records are too thin. But the interest itself is documented. What we know for certain, 432 lost, 440 won. No scientific justification was published, no acoustic study was commissioned comparing the two. The conference report simply records the result. And everyone who played music from that point forward played at a frequency that had not existed in Western music in any dominant form before that room made that decision.
Return to Verdi. Return to the letter. In 1884, when Verdi wrote to the Italian Music Commission, he did not just complain about pitch. He brought evidence. He brought a tuning fork, a physical instrument, a metal U-shape that, when struck, vibrates at a precise, fixed frequency. His tuning fork was stamped A equals 432. He had commissioned it specifically. He had used it throughout the composition of his late operas, Othello in 1887, Falstaff in 1893. He insisted his premieres be performed to that fork. In 1896, 2 years before his death, Verdi made a final appeal to the Italian government. He requested that 432 be adopted as the official Italian pitch standard. He wrote that the rising pitch in concert halls was damaging singers, not metaphorically, but physically. Sopranos were tearing their voices. Tenors were developing nodules on their vocal cords from the chronic strain of performing at pitches their instruments were not built to sustain. He was 73 years old. He had spent his life listening to the human voice. Nobody listened to him. That tuning fork, if it still exists, sits somewhere in a museum archive in northern Italy, stamped, precise, unheard. This is not an isolated case. In the 1920s, the American physician Royal Raymond Rife developed a frequency-based device for targeting diseased cells. His laboratory notes, held today at the Smithsonian Institution, document specific frequencies he identified as resonant with different cellular structures. His work was published in peer-reviewed journals. In 1934, a clinical study at the University of Southern California observed the effects of his technology on 16 terminal cancer patients. Then his laboratory was raided. His notes were confiscated. His equipment was destroyed. His funding evaporated. The American Medical Association, under its director, Morris Fishbein, who had a documented financial relationship with pharmaceutical manufacturers, ran a coordinated campaign to discredit him. Rife's story is its own film, but notice the structure: a frequency-based approach to human health, institutional suppression, a specific financial interest in the suppression, records that survive only in fragments. In the 1990s, research teams at Stanford and MIT separately published findings on the effects of low-frequency sound on human cortisol levels. Both teams found that frequencies below 440 Hz produced measurably different neurochemical responses than frequencies above it. Both studies were published in journals with limited circulation. Neither was replicated with public funding. The individual cases each have a conventional explanation. Together, they describe something else. This is the part I keep returning to, because if the question were only about pitch, only about orchestras and tuning forks, it would be a footnote, a historical curiosity. But the question underneath the question is this: who benefits from a population that is perpetually slightly agitated? Who benefits from a standard that was set without explanation in the same month that the last European peace was collapsing? Every piece of recorded music you have heard in your life, every album, every film score, every song on the radio, every concert you attended, was produced in A equals 440 Hz. The streaming platforms carry it. The mixing consoles are calibrated to it. The digital audio workstations that every producer in the world uses default to it. ISO 16 is built into the firmware of electronic instruments sold in every country on Earth. You did not choose this frequency. You were never asked. And the researchers who have spent careers studying the neurological effects of sound, the field called psychoacoustics, have produced a growing body of literature suggesting that the frequency environment we inhabit shapes attention, stress response, and emotional regulation in ways we do not consciously register. That system is still running today. You are inside it right now. Verdi's tuning fork was stamped with a number. It was not a philosophy, it was not a theory, it was a measurement, a precise physical description of a vibration that he and the physicists and the instrument makers and the singers of his time had settled on through decades of trial and failure and careful listening. That number was not disproven in 1939. It was not tested against its competitor and found wanting. It was voted away in a conference room in London by representatives of governments that had other interests, in a year when other interests were about to devour the world. What we lost was not just a frequency. We lost the argument about whether the frequency mattered. And in the 86 years since that conference, no international body has ever agreed to hold that argument again. Somewhere, in a museum archive in northern Italy, there is a metal tuning fork. It is still vibrating at